We all accept the concept of innocent until proven guilty. However, what happens when it's being robbed of your innocence that makes you guilty? How does and should the system respond then? Well, it seems lawmakers in Scotland may perhaps have an answer. The nation is to stop treating children under 12 as offenders after its parliament voted earlier this year to raise the age of criminal responsibility from 8. When children commit crimes, we have to accept the system is broken. The onus should be on local law enforcement to figure out what went wrong and social services to intervene to find a solution. If our children are going awry, it's our fault, not theirs. Many experts and human rights bodies, including the UN, believe that 12 is still too young to criminalise our kids. This may well be true, but at least it's better than 8.
No shortage of assertions there, June, and although it's a very easy case for me to make, but I do have to point to the killers of James Bulger. How was that our fault?
Well, I would say that the adults that were in those children's lives, and I'm not in any way defending what they did, so please, let's make sure we get that clear. But I would say that the adults that were in those children's lives for sure failed them.
You said it was our
as
fault.
in
not us, as five of us, but
adults, as in, yes, of course, as a society, that's what's implied. It's funny how no one else seems to be confused by
robbed
that.
of your innocence, and the system is broken.
Yeah.
Again, how is the system broken? I think you have some halcyon view of perhaps 70s or 80s. We have youngsters now who would slit your throat as soon as look at you if they're caught up in the wrong side of drug deals or whatever it might be. The idea that we would somehow decide that it's an opportunity to go easy with them is exactly the wrong. There are very, very, very few people who are actually prosecuted in this age group anyway. So if you look at the stats, it's a very small number. It's not as if we are routinely locking up children.
But I don't think any child should be.
Well, I think in the instance, and I'll go there again, it's a horrific case, and we don't want to dwell on it, but there's someone such as the killers of James Bulger. June, on this one, I think you are respectfully, I think you're utterly wrong.
The killers of James Bulger shocked the nation, and it's something that is imprinted in our memories till this day. There's got to be, I think, a compromise, though, in this conversation between basically providing children with a criminal conviction and punishing them for a wrongdoing. And surely we can punish children in a way that doesn't... they're not self-exclusion. It's not either or. So you could punish somebody like the killers of James Bulger, but not have this criminal conviction looming over their heads that then define the rest of their lives. Because though that was abhorrent, they were...
Can I just say something? I covered the trial of James.
Yeah.
Of James Bulger, and I watched those two.
The trial of his murderers.
Of course, the trial. Yes, sorry, the trial of his murderers, obviously. Robert Venables and John Venables and Robert Thompson, and let me tell you, and I'm not going to say it now clearly, but what they did to that boy was never. No, let me finish my point. What they did to that boy was never published. We made a decision not to publish it because it was so horrific. What they did could not have been prompted by anything their parents had done or by anything society had done.
But Carol, do we accept that there is a difference in terms of how your brain is forming as a child and how you are as an adult?
I'll tell you
what I would say, that a child from a healthy, loving, normal background, it's very unlikely that they are going to commit those kinds of heinous crimes. So what we have to ask ourselves is, what's gone wrong? And I believe that we have to look at the adults in that child's life as much as we are looking at that child.
How do you explain the crime of someone like Kieran Hayward, who was 17-year-old Jane Vermeulen? His parents did everything right. They were a middle-class couple.
How old?
He was 17.
17.
Yes.
But she's not arguing against 17.
Yeah, but he was a child. He was a child with his parents long before he was 17.
He was talking about children.
He was talking about children. What I would say with a 10-year-old, I think, you know, we can't expect a 10-year-old to behave, to take complete responsibility for their actions. Because, you know, you can't get married till you're 16, you can't vote till you're 18, or what's the...
So we accept those things,
no,
right?
But I still think there are studies that show that 8-year-olds know the difference between right and wrong.
But there's studies that show that the brain hasn't fully formed by that point.
Let me finish my point. My point is that doesn't mean that when we, quotes, punish them, they have to be punished as adults. But we still have to do it in a way
Well, we're saying the same thing.
Well, I know we are. I'm agreeing with you in this sense, but what I'm saying is they
That's
can't
the strangest
be put in.
way of agreeing.
Well, I was trying to agree with you on that sense.
well,
I think 10 is too young.
I think we should clear some things up. I used to represent young defendants in youth court when I was a barrister. And there are two things I want to say, really. This isn't about letting children off the hook or pretending that crimes committed by young people aren't serious.
Of course not.
I think part of the problem with this issue, if you talk to people who work in the criminal justice system, everyone knows the case of Jamie Bulger is really the reason why we are an outlier in the world as having 10 of the age of criminal responsibility. And the images from that trial, you know, images of those children leading that little toddler away have haunted us all, rightly, because they are so traumatic. But it's not a good thing to do to take extreme cases, and there are a handful, it's not the only one, and base policy that affects thousands of children on the very most extreme cases.
Can I ask you a question? Because I don't understand why we have to slap a criminal conviction as a matter of public record, because surely we could, this distinction I was making earlier, that it doesn't have to be either or, surely we could punish whatever the appropriate punishment is without punishing children with a
process.
Can I?
Well, sorry, let's Nick.
Where I agree with June is that I think as a society, this isn't about saying it's our fault, Nick. This is about saying when a child does something like this, it's our problem that we should try and solve.
Correct.
When a child goes down that route, that is something we should see as something we need to fix, because that person is still growing. Their brain has a high degree of plasticity.
That science proves that anyway. Can I answer your question? Because you asked me about murder. I just want to answer Nick's question.
I just want to put this stat in when we're talking about crime. You talk about crime growing. 4,500 knife crimes last year, which is an increase of 7% on the year before. So all the things that people are trying to do, which are not putting them among criminals and in the system, aren't working.
Because look, the frequency of the crimes, the severity of the crimes, none of that, I think, is directly pertinent to June's point, which is nobody's saying don't punish them, and nobody's denying these crimes happen. In answer to Nick's question, if an 8-year-old murders somebody, I'd say to you that they are not criminally responsible because they probably have mental health problems and their brain probably isn't developed, because I cannot conceive of an 8-year-old murdering somebody with full responsibility and intent.
Correct. And I would say if an 8-year-old murders somebody or commits a heinous crime, you cannot in any way compare that to an adult doing the same thing.
So what do you do with them, June?
Well, for sure, they need to be prosecuted. But what I'm saying is that we also need to look into what went wrong, and we need to look at rehabilitation, because the chances are, even if you do try them as an adult, they're probably only going to spend 10 to 15 years in prison. And then they come out as adults who haven't actually been dealt with.
I can tell you from personal experience, the young people I've defended, some of them did terrible things.
Correct.
Which I'm not defending that there need to be consequences. But in every single case I can recall, there was a catalogue of attempts by people to call for help, to help this person before they got to that stage. Whether it was a parent, a social worker, a teacher, the help was not available. And I would be much more interested in this conversation if we tried everything else first. If we had tried to work out how do you help a vulnerable young person who is showing the signs of going down that path, who has psychological and emotional trauma. We're not seriously trying to fix that, and then we just criminalise them, and that doesn't solve the
look at the reoffending rate. Just on, very quickly, sorry, Carol, the reoffending rate of children that have been convicted, they end up 40.9% of children and young people reoffend. So we're not actually dealing with the problem here. What we're doing is we're sending them to the University of Crime, and then they carry on committing crime.
There's been some experiments done, some studies done, which showed that some of these kids were taken, some were put into boarding schools, proper boarding schools. I mean, I don't mean for criminals, and others were intensively fostered, and it actually that has had really great results. One, it's cheaper. Two, they're not mixing with crime or criminals, and three, it has good. June, I am agreeing with you half for once, but not about the Jamie Bulger thing. The Jamie Bulger thing is a worry.
But I'm not. Please, let's get that clear in terms of the Jamie Bulger case. As Afua said, that is an extreme case.
But they have to let that dominate our approach to policy forever. I don't think it is a good foundation for something that affects thousands of children, none of whom
can't look
have
at
committed a
outliers as
crime
representing
quite like
the
It
this.
is interesting because the age of criminal responsibility in other countries. I mean, we're one of the 10 at
Yeah.
lowest. Denmark 15. I mean, we've got a graphic here.
Yeah.
Portugal 16. Luxembourg 18. Belgium 18. So in Belgium you can't be convicted of a criminal offence until you're 18.
That seems a bit high, but I think
Yeah,
8 is
it does
definitely
to
too
me.
low for me.
Can I read this UN quote? This is from the UN Global Study earlier this year. And what it says is, childhood is when children develop their personality, their emotional relationships with others, their social and educational skills, and their talents. Children should grow up in a family environment where they experience love, protection and security. Placing children in institutions and other facilities where they are or may be deprived of liberty is difficult to reconcile with the guiding principles of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And when this bit goes wrong, I believe as a society we should take responsibility.